What's going on, you guys, and welcome to my review of the McLaren 675 LT. To say I'm excited for this one would be a massive understatement. I've always admired this car from afar, and I've watched all the videos from when this car was first released, and oh my goodness, to be sitting in a 675 LT for the first time, definitely something else. So what is a 675 LT? Well, this is a car that's actually several years old now, and essentially it's the higher performance, more track-focused version of the already insanely capable McLaren 650S. So it uses the same 3.8-liter twin-turbocharged flat-plane crank V8 engine, but this has upgraded turbochargers, camshafts, and revised ECU tuning to give this better response and more peak power than the 650S. That means 666 horsepower, 516 pound-feet of torque, 8,500 RPM redline. This car also has some extensive weight savings measures over the 650S to save approximately 200 pounds. So we have carbon bumpers and fenders, lightweight wheels, a titanium exhaust, and a polycarbonate engine cover. The curb weight of this car has been measured at just under 3,000 pounds. That is an insanely low curb weight for a car that has well over 650 horsepower. To put that in perspective, it's only about 150 pounds heavier than a Gen 2 Subaru BRZ, but has 3 times the power. Of course, this uses a carbon tub. It's extremely rigid and also obviously contributes to the light weight. Good old-fashioned hydraulic power steering. You don't see pretty much any supercars nowadays with hydraulic power steering. 7-speed dual clutch transmission. It's been tuned to shift even quicker than the one in the 650S. We've got double wishbone suspension front and rear. And let me read some of the performance figures for this car in a straight line. 205 mile an hour top speed, 0 to 60 in under 3 seconds, 0 to 124 miles per hour in 7.9 seconds, and it does the quarter mile in 10.5 seconds at 140 miles per hour. Those are insane figures, especially for a 7 to 8 year old car. Only 1,000 765 LTs were ever made, 500 coupes, 500 spiders, and the current market value, anywhere from $200,000 to $300,000. On average, around 250 grand. This one is finished in volcano yellow. Love this interior. It's actually very reminiscent of my NSX in the way this dash just feels like it angles away from you towards the windshield. It gives the cockpit a much more airy feel. These are the comfort seats, not the McLaren P1 buckets. And you know what? They're very comfortable, just like the name would suggest, and they still have plenty of bolstering. Lots of Alcantara on the interior. It's stitched, looks pretty good. What dates this interior though is this center area here. The screen is vertical, but it's very low resolution. And some of these buttons, well, they just don't feel like they belong in a car with an almost $400,000 original MSRP. But enough of that, let's take this thing for a drive. That twin turbo V8 barks to life. The buttons for the transmission are all the way back here, so you kind of have to push your elbow back. These 2 switches here, you have to hit the active button to light up these rings around the switches, and then you can adjust the mode. So the left switch controls the handling, or the suspension essentially. This does have adaptive dampers. And the right switch is for power, and that affects the throttle response and the transmission tuning. So we'll start out in sport for both. Wow. First full throttle redline pull in a 675 LT. Acceleration is outrageous, and because the engine revs so high and the gearing is so long, you actually have to hold on for dear life with this car when you put your foot down. Carbon ceramic brakes. They take quite a lot of pedal pressure to get the car slowed down. It's a very race car-like feel, not like a lot of newer performance cars that give you a lot of initial bite. You know what? The engine, as powerful as it is, it's not the star of the show. It only takes 2 or 3 corners in a 675 LT to realize this car is all about the chassis. This carbon tub is phenomenal. It feels so rigid, and with the suspension tuning and these dampers in sport mode, the car feels just the right balance of planted and lively, if that makes sense. It feels very confidence inspiring because it soaks up the bumps and corners so flat, but at the same time it communicates what it's doing very well, and the car moves around just a little bit, just not even on its tippy toes, like halfway up on its tippy toes. Not enough to make you nervous, but enough to give you a really good sense of what the car is doing at all times. And that's also enhanced by this hydraulic steering rack. This is the best steering I've felt in any supercar, from any era even. The way it weights up in the corners as the front tires are experiencing lateral G's, and the on-center feel is incredible. No slop in the steering rack just off center, and so much information about the road surface comes through the steering wheel. And on top of all that, the quickness of the steering ratio is perfect. Not overly quick like a lot of Ferraris, and not overly slow like something like a 997 GT3. It gives me the feedback of a 997 GT3 steering rack, but doesn't require as many turns to get the car through some of these tighter corners. By the way, this car is optioned with the power adjustable steering wheel, tilt and telescope. That's very nice. What a car. Immediately just jumping into this car, I thought it would feel nerve-wracking to drive. This much power being sent through just the rear tires. By the way, we're on a Michelin PS4S, not the OEM P0 Trofeo. Much less traction and grip than this car comes with from the factory. And the fact that it's so lightweight with so much power, and it does have some turbo lag, you would think it would be an absolute handful to drive this car, and yet it's not. Is it a beginner's sports car experience? No. You still have to know what you're doing, but it's surprisingly approachable. And that's because the car communicates so well. It just tells me exactly what it's doing at all times. You feel everything through the chassis, through this comfort seat, and through the steering wheel, and through the brake pedal. All right, let's move the handling over to track mode, powertrain into track mode. All of a sudden the dampers, much more aggressive. The car just communicates even more in this mode without getting upset by the little bumps. Wow, the steering loads up so well in the corner. Even the steering wheel itself is the perfect diameter. The 7-speed dual clutch, I'd say it's just as fast as any PDK from this era. Actually, it's faster than a non-GT Porsche's PDK. Wow. These brakes take a little bit of getting used to because you do have to press on the pedal quite hard. Now let's dial this back into sport handling. Because we're on a PS4S, a not super grippy tire, the ESC is basically always on in second gear when you're going full throttle. But the ESC does such a good job at not feeling intrusive. It just kind kind of feels like the car has a couple hundred horsepower less when you're in second gear, but it's not abruptly cutting your throttle. But look at that, partial throttle in the middle of the rev range around 5,000 RPMs, and this car pulls so hard. Wow. Nearly seamless upshifts at redline. There is a little bit of a kick in the butt, but it's very slight. There is turbo lag. You really got to keep this engine above, say, 5,500 RPM. Brakes are so powerful, but you do have to press the pedal so hard. Woo. And interestingly, these paddle shifters, they're actually connected from the left and the right paddles, so they're more like a rocker. And the owner at UA was telling me that when he's driving this car with his daughter, kind of holding her back with one hand, he can shift up and down with just his left hand. Let's do a first gear pull here. We'll just roll into it. Wow, this is an absolute spaceship. It's so communicative. What a car. This is one of the best cars I have ever driven. This puts a lot of Porsche GT cars to shame. And let me explain. Let's put this back into normal mode for everything. What makes this car stand head and shoulders above basically any other modern supercar that I've driven, let's say from the past 8 to 10 years or so? Obviously this car is incredibly fast and it comes alive at high speed. However, unlike a lot of newer Porsche GT cars like the 991 generations and 992, this car feels alive at low speed as well because of this ultra rigid chassis, because of this beautifully talkative steering rack. In a lot of ways, this feels like a way higher performance spiritual successor to the original Acura NSX. Even the seating position, the visibility out the front, it's all very reminiscent. The beautiful steering feel, the way the chassis communicates everything. It's a beautifully balanced supercar. And again, it's fun at all speeds. Even just cruising 2,500 RPM fourth gear, the car just feels alive, and that's something you don't even get in modern Porsche GT cars, or even that Ferrari 458 I drove. As much as I love that car, I truly do adore it because of the engine and the lively handling. That car's big shortcoming is the steering. It's too quick and too light. It doesn't have enough feedback. This McLaren has the best steering of any modern performance-focused car I have driven. It's truly a revelation. Wow, wow, wow. A big shout out to the co-owners Yitao and Yue for letting me experience what is now possibly my new favorite supercar. Let me know what you think about the McLaren 675 LT. This is an old model now. The 720S came out shortly after, and the 750S is now out. And of course there was a 765 LT version as well. I can't even fathom how those cars are better than this. But the funny thing is, Yue just told me he made a deal on a 750S just a couple days ago. So once he takes delivery, hopefully I'll get to experience firsthand just the progression of modern McLarens. Thank you guys for watching. Let me know how you think this 675 LT stacks up to other supercars in the $200,000 to $300,000 price range. Is this the value play in the sub $1 million supercar market? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.